Good morning, everyone. My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I'd like to welcome you to TransLink's June 2023 Open Board Meeting. Thank you all for joining us virtually today. At this time, I'd like to call today's meeting to order, and I'd like to start by saying that we respect the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their continued resilience, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come. We recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. June is National Indigenous History Month, an important time to honor and celebrate the diverse societal contributions, traditions, and cultures of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples across the country. You may have noticed that many of our board members have added a virtual background to our screens, which are created by the Musqueam artist, Gracie Lynn Yu. So before we proceed, are there any items on the consent agenda that a director wishes to remove from consent for discussion? So seeing none, I'd like to now introduce Andy Ross, who's going to deliver our safety moment for the day. So Andy.
Thank you, Lorraine. I have a safety minute here, and for today's safety minute, I'd like to focus on a common problem that we experience in our modern lives, and that is the issue of prolonged sitting. Humans are built to stand upright and walk based on our evolutionary history. Our heart and cardiovascular systems work more effectively that way. However, when we're in pain, it may be hard to make ourselves get up and move around. But consider this: a growing body of evidence suggests that spending too many hours sitting is hazardous to our health. Habitual inactivity raises risks for obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, deep vein thrombosis, and metabolic syndrome. Researchers aren't sure why prolonged sitting has such harmful health consequences, but one possible explanation is that it relaxes your largest muscles. And when the muscles relax, they take up very little glucose from the blood, risk raising our type 2 diabetes. Interestingly, a link between illness and sitting first emerged way back in the 1950s, when researchers found that on double-decker bus drivers, they were twice as likely to have a heart attack as the conductor colleagues. The drivers were sitting for 90% of their work days of their shifts, and the conductors typically climbed about 600 stairs each day. Given the research, breaking up long blocks of sitting to flex your muscles seems like a wise move for all of us. So let's all try to build more activity into our day. Maybe set a timer to remind you to get up and move around every so often. Take your phone calls standing up, and try an adjustable standing desk for your computer if you're able to do so. So that's our safety minute for today, Lorraine.
Andy, thank you very much for doing that. Now, I just want to make a note that Harpinder was asked to do that. He prepared all those words for you, and he unfortunately is having some connection problems. So we really appreciate Andy, you doing that on behalf of Harpinder, one of our fellow board members. So the next item on the agenda is our, excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat, is our public delegations. And so we have several delegates today. So I'd like to start by asking each of the delegates to please respect the 5 minutes that you're allocated. We're going to have a timer go off at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. That should be heard by all. And if you can just plan to wrap up as soon as you hear that time, so we can get on to each of the delegates. So the first delegate on my list is Richard Reed. So Jennifer, is Richard here to join us?
Chair, Richard is not here to join us, so we could move to the second delegate,
okay.
James Yu, who is here.
Okay, that's great. So James, welcome to our board meeting.
Hello.
Yes, welcome. And so
Hi.
We're going to set the timer now, and you have 5 minutes, and there'll be an alarm that goes off for you at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so you can wrap up your comments.
Good, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is James Yu. I am a 19-year-old PhD student of economics at UBC and the initiator of a petition to restore the suspended 480 express bus from Bridgeport Station to UBC. I am here on behalf of the 700 signatories of my petition and as an outside acquaintance of the Office of External Affairs at UBC's AMS Student Union. As you may know, when the pandemic began several years ago, the 480 was suspended as UBC was closed. There was an expectation that this suspension would be temporary. However, TransLink proceeded to permanently cancel this route in April with no warning and no public consultation. In the absence of this consultation, I stepped in and conducted it myself. When the Southwest Area Transit Plan was finalized, there was an agreement that the 480 would be kept in place after the opening of the R4, with ridership monitored as connecting services improve. It is the shared understanding of the UBC community that no such improvement has occurred, and therefore this agreement has been broken. The problems with the loss of the 480 are the loss of speed, the additional transfer, and severe overcrowding. I would like to remind you that these are commuter students coming from Richmond, Delta, and Surrey. These are 2-hour long distance commutes that already had 2 transfers between overcrowded services in the soaking rain. Adding an additional transfer on top of that in both directions to a service that doesn't have the space for us has created an environment where my peers are stressed, tired, and unable to learn by the time they make it to UBC. I can confirm this because this is also my own personal experience. Because of this severe impact on mental health, many students opted to move away from Richmond and South Fraser, despite the mounting pressures from the housing crisis. Many students who take part-time jobs to afford tuition gave up jobs in Richmond because it was too mentally and physically taxing to get to them. Many students gave up affordable dining options in Richmond because of the toll of traveling here outweighed the financial savings. And many students turned to driving, which increased carbon emissions and worsened traffic conditions. None of this would have happened if the 480 was in place because the commute would be faster, overcrowding would be mitigated, and one of the transfers would be saved. This is what those students told me. This is what happens when you destroy regional connectivity. TransLink told me the 480 remains discontinued because it will be 1 to 4 minutes slower and alternatives have sufficient capacity. I would like to stress that this is false and contradicts the personal experiences of thousands of UBC students during each winter session. And adding additional capacity to the R4, 49, or Canada Line will not successfully support the thousands of UBC students from Richmond and South Fraser because of the induced demand effect, which will result in this capacity being taken by commuters from Vancouver, Burnaby, and everywhere else. We will still end up left behind by TransLink. The only way to restore regional equity and solve all 3 of the runtime, transfer, and capacity issues simultaneously is to reinstate a direct, dedicated 480 connection, just like the direct connection we're restoring between UBC and West Vancouver this fall. TransLink also told me the barriers to entry were bridge traffic and funding. There is already extensive transit priority southbound in Marpole before the bridge, so let's look at northbound. Instead of taking the Oak Street Bridge, you could move the northbound 480 to the Arthur Lane, which has a full transit priority on-ramp and would save several minutes. For funding, you could, for example, discontinue the MT9 extension between Alma and UBC, reallocate that to the 480, and then use the 9's closer Vancouver bus garage instead of Richmond garage. It's this kind of innovative thinking that I wish TransLink did before canceling the 480 and destroying the mental health and well-being of thousands of students across the region. But this company did not do their due diligence. The UBC community does not appreciate our mental health being sacrificed to finance this company's bottom line. The UBC AMS Student Union yesterday delivered a letter to TransLink, which opens with, on behalf of the AMS of UBC Vancouver, the Office of External Affairs extends our unwavering support for the recommendations put forth by James Yu in his comprehensive report regarding the reinstatement of the 480 UBC Richmond bus. Also yesterday, councillors with Public Works and Transportation at the City of Richmond passed a motion to deliver a statement of their own to TransLink outlining their unanimous support for the reinstatement of the 480 service. To that end, my request for this board is to acknowledge these statements, acknowledge our lived experiences, and direct staff to reinstate the 480 service using some of my recommendations for financial and operational efficiency that would restore regional equity and support the mental health and well-being of students in our region. Thank you for your time. This concludes my statement.
James, thank you very much for your presentation. And Kevin, would you like to speak, or do you want me to speak on who's going to respond to this?
I'm sorry, Chair. Are you? Would you like me to respond to that?
Well, we know that Sarah Ross is part of the planning, so I didn't know if you wanted to talk to James about who would get back to him about his presentation.
Yeah, so absolutely. So someone will be getting back to you immediately. It'll either be Sarah, our VP of Planning, but we'll certainly be reaching out and look forward to receipt of that letter. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm sure it'll come across my desk here momentarily. So thank you.
So thank you, James. I'd like to move on to Rod Wolf, who is now, I think, going to join our board meeting. I see he's just connecting to the audio now. Welcome, Rod.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to our board meeting. So you have 5 minutes, Rod, to make your presentation. And so we welcome you to start anytime you're ready. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Is it just hearing, or are you visually seeing too?
We don't see you, but we hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
What I wanted to bring to attention, I did speak to Mayor Brad West already a few weeks ago about this. I have a bus stop that I'm in Maple Ridge that was put in front of my house, but like inappropriately, without any notice, without anybody telling us, without being able to voice it. And it's caused a lot of distress and grief within the family division. And not only that, the safety and the privacy of my kids. I did write letters to our mayor here at Maple Ridge about this. I did talk to someone in TransLink. It took 6 months for the mayor to call me back. Mayor West called me within 6 weeks. I appreciated that. I told him that. It's, I have my son's being bullied at school, and he gets off the stop. He has to walk the other direction. I was hoping that I was able to visually show you how bad it is. It's morally, it's just so morally wrong that I can't even explain how bad it is. It used to be quite a few meters up the road where it should be left, and now it's actually placed right in front of my doorstep. And originally, back in October, November, they actually cut a hole to put the pad and a shelter across my front sidewalk within 10, 15 feet from my doorway. And I had to get a hold of them, and the CAO, and they said, oh no, that's really bad. The person who planned this and put this together admitted he was wrong. And he never even came down to see the mess that they made. I was promised by our council that it wouldn't go there. So they did actually move it. And they did call me back and say, yeah, we won't put it there. That's inappropriate. And they did move it. And a couple months ago, ironically, on a Sunday morning, they moved it back. It's almost as if they waited for me to leave. And I was told by somebody from the crew out here that did say that they read my emails that I sent that were private emails to the mayor, CAO, council, said that because I voiced it, I don't know if this is true, but they said the planners were just upset and they put it back. I hope that wasn't true, but this is what she told me. And I've just got a lot of people voicing this, saying that my story's been in the paper. I've lost my tenants. I had because of this, the safety, security, the privacy. My own daughter, I'm a single parent, won't see me because her window is, people are standing there on our sidewalk looking through the window of my kid. I've had to live with my blind shut since October. And I did voice it, my son, the safety of my son. He was ran over at TransLink, on TransLink property 8 years ago in Port Coquitlam. He was run over. So this is really kind of a personal thing too, because not only is he being followed and bullied, now he has to worry about walking the opposite direction. So there's just a lot of different things with this stop that shouldn't be there. And I've invited everybody to come down to look at it. I did have somebody from council come down back in January, and she took pictures and she said, that is wrong. And she was the one that said I wouldn't go there. And they did move it, but then they went back on their word and moved it. So I'm just voicing to where I can, everywhere I can go about this. It's just morally wrong. I don't know what to say. And I know that there are restrictions and boundaries of where they could put a stop. I did drive for TransLink for 12 years myself, and I've never seen a stop put in front of someone's window like it is now. So I've been asking for it to be moved back to where it was, so everybody can sort of have some peace and some safety. I have litter all over my yard right now. I have kids sit there on our sidewalk waiting for the bus. It's just I don't know what else to say quickly, and I don't want to, I know you guys are on a restricted time, and I've reached out and asked for some guidance. I have omnibuds person, I can never say it properly, looking into it and investigating as well. Again, I said talk to Brad West. The paper wants to do another story. I don't want to have to do all that. I just want, and the value of my home has gone down. My property, their BC assessment is now looking at it again. But it's mostly the privacy and security of my children, and I want to TransLink to understand that. And I know, because I work there, I see where the stops are after they go through, they're never in front of someone's window. They're always offsetted by a tree or bush or behind a building, or there's just so numerous, and I know they've always tried hard. And this time, I don't know what happened, but if it is because I voiced it and they're doing it as a retaliation, I hope that's not what it is. It just seems wrong. And I've just asked so many people to come and look at it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rod. And I can hear that you're very distressed about this. So TransLink will get back to you about this. And
okay, no, I appreciate it.
And so we really appreciate you bringing it to the attention of the board. So thank you.
Okay, do you need an address or?
I think we have your email address, etc., and your phone number. So not to worry.
I meant like a home address, like where it is.
Sure. Well, I think someone will reach out to you first, and then we can get all that information from you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Because no, I really appreciate your time. I so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I just hope something can be done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rod.
Take care.
Okay. Thank you. So our next speaker is Robin Tabender. And is Robin here with us?
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and welcome.
Welcome.
Yes, so you have 5 minutes. And if you can please kind of help us with that and adhere to your time, that would be much appreciated.
Did it start when I heard the beep, or does it start now?
No, it starts now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning, TransLink board. I've written to you about a disabled family member who uses the BC Bus Pass program because they're a person with disabilities, and I had a few complaints about how this program is implemented. I have received a reply from a Mark, the Director of Revenue and Compass Operations, but it disappoints me and my family. It didn't address the substantive human rights issues that I raised, and it didn't address the potential for neurological injury associated with the pass being excluded from the West Coast Express. I only realized the situation and the impact it has on our family member once he had purchased a $6 keychain Compass card, which he tried to have his pass put onto. He was told this was not possible because disabled people need to have specially marked passes, otherwise they just sell them. This is what one of your frontline staff said to him, which is a pretty discriminatory attitude about disabled people being inherently dishonest or rule-breaking. And with respect to Mark, he basically said the same thing with a more diplomatic tone. He says that the special passes are required for TransLink to effectively manage the collection of fares. And this actually happened once to the family member. He got onto transit, and for no particular reason, transit police shook him down for his identity and made him stand at the side of the road while they interrogated him about this. And disabled people, as many of you may be aware, are already subject to a humiliating regime of economic surveillance by the government as a condition of receiving assistance. One of our family members' friends was brought to tears by a ministry staffer who told her that if she did not declare the 5 cents of interest she got every month from the bank, she might be, quote, kicked off of welfare, end quote. Disabled people are rarely in a position to challenge their treatment or the policies that impact them due to systemic discrimination and lack of funding for legal challenges. So, as I'm sure you're aware, disabled people are made to use a specially colored pass that also has their name printed on it and their birth year for fare collection purposes. Now, how is a disabled person to go out with friends without them asking, why is your pass a different color? And disabled people have a right to privacy, and not every disability is visible. So solutions like the TransLink office offered our family member of a covered pass. For us, that doesn't pass the smell test, just to put it in a box. Friends like to go through each other's wallets and all sorts of things. The response also pushes the responsibility onto the government program terms. But as I said in my letter, the international conventions concerning the rights of disabled people make it clear that disabled people have a right to transportation. Passing the buck is not good enough, and nice lawyerly arguments about the state versus the corporations the state has incorporated to provide wide-scale mass transit, again, don't pass the sniff test for us. So, to the board, you have, as I understand it, the statutory authority to vary the tariff and to control TransLink staff. You could amend the transit tariff immediately by motion, I would imagine, to include West Coast Express travel, which is for some reason not allowed for people with disability passes. This would enable our family member, if they so chose, to live in Mission and commute to Vancouver. Otherwise, that would be economically infeasible. So this policy really does impact how disabled people are able to live in the community on their own terms. You could reprogram the fare gates so they don't flash a yearly expiry date, but a monthly one. I'm a computer programmer. I know that's technologically feasible. You could direct staff to enable the loading of ministry passes onto keychain Compass cards. That's feasible. When you scan the pass at the Compass card kiosk, it has a little thing that shows up ministry pass. Technically, it's completely possible to load that onto the keychain Compass card. The identifying information is just printed for fare enforcement purposes. So, and I want to close by noting what I think is one of the most important parts of our law. People are presumed innocent, and that is why if the Crown charges you, it puts its case first. In our family's view, it should never be up to an individual to prove they are entitled to something. The Crown or a subsidiary corporation that's exercising regulatory powers should have to prove the person is not entitled. That the Crown offers public transit through TransLink through a statutory corporation does not, to my mind, vary this fundamental rule of our law. I want to thank the board for listening to me, and I repeat my recommendation to amend the tariff to include unlimited West Coast Express travel, to allow passes to be put onto blue Compass cards or novelty passes, and to reprogram the fare gates. While ministry passes for disabled people are not the only yearly passes, a disabled person's pass should look and scan just like a person with a typical monthly pass. Thank you very much for your time.
Robin, thank you very much for coming and presenting to the board today. And we'll definitely take this back, and someone from the organization will be reaching out to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Nathan Devadovich. So Nathan, welcome back to our board meeting. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, Nathan. So the board can hear you, and you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. I know you're very experienced at this, so if you can just manage your time to make sure you wrap up within 5 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nathan.
Chair and board members, my name is Nathan Davidovich. I spoke to the board on March 29, 2023. Your staff, including your CFO and CEO, keep misleading you and not providing you with all the information about Metro Vancouver having the highest fares in Canada. They keep talking about adult fares instead of the average fare, which is the standard used by QTA. This is the total fare revenue for all riders divided by the total of linked journeys. Riders have been defrauded and scammed since 1984 by a badly designed 3-zone fare structure and high fares. It is the fault of staff from both BC Transit and TransLink for the last 39 years. The TransLink board should apologize to the public and fix the fare structure with an equity lens. It cost us $1 billion or more over the last 10 years for the bad compass card and the bad faregates that are easy to push and are not as good as turnstiles. Most progressive transit systems are reducing and capping fares, while here we do the opposite. We keep subsidizing electric vehicles and public charging stations instead of also increasing subsidies for mass public transit. The latter will have a bigger bang for public bucks and will be far more equitable policy and progressive use of public funds. It is unfair to subsidize private electrified automobiles, which will encourage the ongoing growth of regional road infrastructure and not reduce the cost and supports for public transit. The next item is about item 11.2 on your agenda, where you propose many governance changes. The municipalities were consulted prior to the creation of TransLink in 1998, and then it got implemented in 1999. However, many changes over the last 25 years were without any input from municipal councils. The mayors only have one vote on the municipal council, and if you check the voting records of many mayors, they are in minority on many transportation projects as they are outvoted by other members of council. So we need proper consultation with all municipal councils and as well as the public. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you very much, Nathan. And again, appreciate you bringing these things to the board's attention, and we will be looking at them further. So I appreciate your feedback. So the next item, or the next individual on our list is Gudrun. Yeah, Gudrun Langhoff. I'm just hearing some feedback on that, so sorry about that. Gudrun, welcome to the board meeting. Can you hear me clearly? You're on mute, so we can't hear you yet. If you could turn your mute off. There we go. Okay, welcome.
Right. Well, thank you for your for the opportunity to be here today. I live in Marpole for over 40 years, and many of you will now know what's coming. We have this wonderful project that you guys are planning in Marpole for the battery-operated buses, which you know, are very innovative and exciting. We already have the traffic bus barn down here, the trolley bus barn down here, so we know all about a sort of not in service buses and all that kind of stuff coming along Broadway, Granville, and so on. It's wonderful to have innovation and to hear all the things that you're doing to communicate with the public, to give us all a wonderful customer experience, to improve it and entertain us and try to streamline things and what have you. What has not happened here is a significant public engagement to make sure that the community plan that we had with that was planning for significant public access to the river, which is very important down here, and a green space park. That has not happened. The consultation, you know how to do this. I know that because I've been on several committees to do with TransLink and so on. The difficulty that happened here is that I think someone decided that this was the space to use, and the public engagement was limited. The first thing I heard about it was when I got a note in my inbox, in my a mailbox that said, "You may be disturbed by the by the construction noise." That's very, very disturbing. I like transit. I like public transit. I use it a lot. I wish it were better. I wish I had more and could sit down at all the bus stops and all that sort of stuff. But the consultation with the public, with the neighbors in this particular instance has been very, very poor and disappointing. You do a great job with all sorts of things, and this one you didn't. And I want you to I want to make sure that you consult with the community that's had the community plan for so long about having significant park space there and significant access to the river, that it gets maximized to the extent possible now that you've planned it without us. So I appreciate you listening to my griping. I prefer to give accolades when, it's always good when stuff works well. But in this instance, it didn't work well, and the neighborhood is not happy about having 300 buses adding to the buses that we already get here. And why on earth you didn't put it in the largest, fastest growing community in Metro Vancouver is unbelievable. I mean, lots of space available, and Surrey, don't know why it had to be at a hub where you've got already a congestion and the streets at Cambie and Marine Drive is already what we call a dog's breakfast. It's very unsafe for people. It may be fine for cars, but it's not safe for people. In any event, I thank you very much, and I hope that we can rescue something out of this particular dilemma. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Goodwin. And the next speaker on our list is Stanley Tromp, and he's here to actually speak about the same topic. So Stanley, we'll wait for you to join us. Stanley, can you hear me? You're on mute, Stanley, so we can't hear you. Stanley, can you try and get yourself off mute?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Hi, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
So Stanley, you have 5 minutes, and I'd appreciate if you can try and keep your comments within that time. And we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Feedback voices from other people. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I guess you start the clock now. Huh?
Yeah, go ahead, Stanley.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me, Stanley?
Yes, I'm having some technical problems here. Please don't start the clock until I fix these.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, to begin, good day. This is Stanley Trump. I've lived at the corner of Heather Street and Southwest Marine Drive in Marpole for 17 years. In regards to the Marpole Transit Center plan, the problem is that the project contains no park or even a river walkway. This runs counter to Vancouver City Hall's pledge in its 2014 Marpole Community Plan to, within 10 years, quote, create a waterfront park of 10 acres at the foot of Cambie Street, unquote. It would add this park so as to, quote, complete a continuous waterfront Fraser River trail, unquote. This would run from Burrard Inlet to Boundary Road, and it set aside millions of dollars for this goal. It conforms to the city's Blue Ways policy requirements. I now accept that the 10-acre park is no longer feasible, but a trail certainly is. Think of what a great tourist destination this new trail could be for hikers and nature lovers. Terry Slacker, fisherman for 45 years there, urges, can we create a salmon stream and bird habitat on this site? Mayor Gregor Robertson said, quote, there is a compelling case for using street ends that the city controls to create salmon habitat along the Fraser River edge, unquote. To date, over 300 people have signed our Change.org petition calling for a park on the TransLink site. By contrast, in the so-called community consultation TransLink did last February, a grand total of 9 out of 26 respondents, 9 out of 26 supported the MTC project as stated. That is a 300 to 9 ratio. Can this contrast be ignored? But TransLink has responded well to public appeals before. In 2004, TransLink agreed to add a walkway between the river and its Hudson Street bus depot. Yet even for that small concession, Claudia Leroy said it was like fighting World War III. And what are the environmental impacts of the MTC project? On May 17th, TransLink's Public Affairs branch wrote me, quote, regarding the 3 environmental reports you have requested relating to the MTC, these documents are in referral periods with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada and BC Ministry of Forests and Indigenous Nations, and as such are not yet publicly available, unquote. My questions are, 1, what exactly do you mean by the term referral periods? Mr. Quinn wrote to us on May 10th, quote, TransLink has conducted all the necessary environmental studies as required to obtain the necessary permits and approvals at municipal, provincial, and federal level, unquote. Question 2, which of these agencies have formally granted permit approval to the MPC project and which have not yet? It is a simple yes or no question. That is for Fisheries, Oceans Canada, Transport Canada, and BC Ministry of Forests. Question 3, what kind of approval is it for each one? That is conditional, preliminary, or final, and conditional upon what? I have called TransLink dozens of times over the past month for answers to these yes-no questions, but receive only silence. You never reply. Why should the public and City Council approve your project if you will not tell us the environmental impacts? They ask, if these reports are positive, then why does TransLink not release them? Then perhaps they might not be positive. Moreover, these reports were produced at taxpayers' expense. Mr. Quinn says, do FOI requests for them. TransLink knows that the FOI project takes 2 to 3 months to release records, that is, long after City Council votes on the MPC project. I wrote a book on FOI law. It is well known the FOI law was never meant to be a substitute for routine release. The BC FOI Act's Purpose Clause, Section 2.2, it says, quote, this act does not replace other procedures for access to information or limit in any way access to information, unquote. Here, TransLink is misusing the FOI law solely as a delaying tactic. This has been a political nightmare for us. I also urge at TransLink to approve the plan by architect Norm Zottenberg, by which the city would give the MPC site 4 meters of the North Kent Street right-of-way in exchange for 4 meters of path along the river. I emailed a copy of this plan and a map to all of you on Monday. Have you seen it? The best thing is that the proposal does not affect any way TransLink's proposed core site layout. It just encircles it. And it does not impair the functional operations of the MPC, so it is a win-win solution. It is not fair that all the compromises on the site should come solely from area residents. In sum, the lack of a walkway on the site would be a tragic lost opportunity, especially since the Marple population will boom by many thousands in the coming year, with families, with children seeking nature. Yet if TransLink revised its proposal to include these benefits, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, this would be immensely popular and greatly enhance its public reputation for generations to come. What do you want your lasting public legacy to be? Thank you.
Sorry, Stanley, now I was on mute. So thank you very much for your presentation. I do want to confirm that the board members have been receiving your communications, as has the staff, and we are continuing to work through this issue at our end, and we will be back to you. So rest assured, you are not being ignored. There's just things going on behind the scenes. So I appreciate your presentation today to the board.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stanley. And so that concludes the public delegates for our meeting today. And so I'd like to move back to our agenda, which now takes us to the report from our CEO for the Q2. So Kevin, this would turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Having trouble unmuting myself. It's going around today. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. In my management report, I'll be providing updates about safety on our system, how we're expanding our bus network, some updates on some cycling infrastructure improvements, maintenance work that will be happening on the Expo line, and the return of the bike bus. I'll also share some of the ways that we've been connecting with communities in the region. Next slide, please. As Chair Cunningham noted, this meeting is coming off the heels of our annual general meeting, and at the AGM, I touched on the importance of safety on the system and what we're doing to ensure that our customers and our employees feel safe on transit. In response to the recent incidents that occurred across our communities and on transit, we recently introduced an educational safety campaign, and we're currently in the process of installing 5,000 new ads on the interior of buses across the system. This campaign is visible elsewhere on the system, including the interior of SkyTrains, transit information panels, digital screens at SkyTrain platforms, and you'll be seeing street teams handing out informational cards out to customers. I want to reiterate something that I noted at the AGM that I think can't be said enough, which is that every single person has the right to feel safe on our system. And this campaign really aims to ensure that our customers know they can text transit police at any time if they feel unsafe or want to report suspicious behavior. Our commitment is to deliver a transportation system that supports the health, the safety, and the security of our customers and employees. Next slide, please. I want to touch on some track maintenance that's coming up from June 17th to July 31st. We are undertaking essential work to ensure our SkyTrain system remains reliable and in a state of good repair for customers for years to come. So we're replacing 2 SkyTrain track switches along the Expo line near Gateway Station in Surrey. And to accommodate this important work, one side of the SkyTrain tracks between the Scott Road Station and King George Station will be closed. So it's recommended that customers traveling to or from Surrey build in at least 15, 20 minutes of extra travel time to their commute and prepare for some crowded conditions on trains and platforms during peak periods. We're going to be putting additional SkyTrain staff out and available on the system to assist customers during this work. With the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain on the horizon, this work is absolutely critical to ensure we're prepared for a future in which there will be more trains carrying more customers on our system in the coming years. So it's a really critical piece of state of good repair that we need to do with this switch work. Next slide, please. We've recently taken important steps to continue to expand on our existing bus network, and in April, we launched the new Route 80, an express bus route serving the city of Vancouver between the River District and Marine Drive Station. Route 80 will improve service for the rapidly growing River District community, and it's expected to serve 400 to 500 customers per day. And the launch of this was really made possible thanks to some of the efficiencies found through our bus stop balancing program, which made service faster on several Vancouver bus routes. Making those routes more efficient saved operating costs, which have been reinvested into the system through Route 80. We're continuing to look for new opportunities to balance bus stops on other routes throughout Metro Vancouver so that we can reinvest those savings elsewhere. Next slide, please. Also in April, we announced that Rapid Bus is coming to the Scott Road corridor. We've started making road improvements to prepare for the future R6 Rapid Bus, which will serve the busiest bus corridor south of the Fraser with over 30,000 weekday boardings. Improvements on Scott Road will ensure that the R6 delivers faster and more reliable journeys for our customers, a more accessible sidewalk space to get on and off the bus, and improve safety for all road users. Our largest service expansion since 2020, the R6 will help keep up with rapidly growing demand for transit south of the Fraser, an area that's now exceeding pre-pandemic ridership levels and seeing the strongest ridership growth in Metro Vancouver. In addition to Rapid Bus, the Scott Road corridor has been identified as a potential future corridor for bus rapid transit in Access for Everyone, our 10-year priorities. Next slide, please. Through our municipal funding program, we're proud to invest in infrastructure that helps build, maintain, and improve sustainable transportation connections through the region. And I'm pleased to share that through this program, we've recently taken steps to improve cycling infrastructure. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm a little off key here. I want to touch on some of our summer service changes here for a second before I get into that and talk about the return of the bike bus. Next week, our summer service changes will come into effect. That's great news for customers. And these changes include increasing bus service on 11 routes to improve access and convenience to destinations like Stanley Park, White Pine Beach, as well as Deep Cove. And these service increases will help our customers really explore all the outdoor destinations that our region has to offer. And as part of these changes, we're pleased to bring back the bike bus, a popular service from last summer. providing extra capacity for bicycles between Bridgeport Station and Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal. The bike bus will better connect cyclists with ferry sailings. So starting on June 30th and running until September 4th, the bike bus will provide service on Fridays, on weekends, and holidays. This was such a popular service last summer, and I'm excited to share that we're extending bike bus service by 3 hours until 11 p.m. to better align with those ferry sailings. And this is something our customers really wanted, and we're excited to make it happen. It's also a perfect example of how integrating public transit with active transportation can meet the needs of our customers and help the environment. Next slide, please. We've got some Ride and Shine car-free days coming up. So for the second year in a row, we're welcoming back our Ride and Shine summer campaign, really encouraging people to go car-free this summer and take transit, cycle, or walk to explore the region. And through this year's campaign, we're offering a new bike valet service, discounts to local summer destinations, and we'll be highlighting bus routes that customers can take to explore the region this summer. I'm really proud to share that we're also sponsoring 6 car-free day festivals this summer. They're a great opportunity for us to encourage customers to get out of their cars, experience all our region has to offer using sustainable transportation. We held our first car-free day of the year in Surrey on June 10th, where nearly 15,000 people came out to participate. I'm already looking forward to the next one, which takes place on Columbia Street in New West on Saturday, July 29th. I'll be there, and I hope you'll join me. Next slide, please. This year, I started hosting a community roundtable series to create open lines of communication with groups across the region who use our transportation system, but who we may not hear from through our traditional methods of engagement. And through this initiative, I'm meeting with small groups to discuss key current topics, really gather feedback, have a deeper and more meaningful conversations about the future of transportation. And to date, we've hosted 3 of these roundtables with major employers, nonprofit leaders, and most recently, the Chinese Canadian community. And these roundtables have already proven to be crucial to developing key relationships, communicating our goals, and ensuring we're on track to deliver for our customers as we advance our 10-year priorities. Next slide, please. We recently partnered with Commutify, and that's a company that offers a web-based commuting platform that helps employers make really informed, data-driven decisions. Commutify analyzes different commuting options by considering factors like time, cost, and carbon emissions. And they use this information to recommend the most suitable option for each commuter, which helps companies track and understand their employees' commuting patterns. As part of a year-long program trial, we'll offer subsidies to organizations of different sizes who participate in the program. It will help those organizations really easily understand their employees' commuting habits and provide them with a platform to manage programs like employee transit passes and cycling incentives. Commutify also makes it easy for employees to access the climate-related programs their employer offers and encourage more sustainable choices. And after the completion of the program, we'll work with Commutify to evaluate the impact the program has had on commuting patterns. So really, really cool program. Next slide, please. Lastly, I am excited to share that TransLink's first ever podcast launched at the end of May, covering popular transit and transportation topics in Metro Vancouver. And the podcast, called What's the Tea, is a new way for us to reach our customers and talk about what it takes to operate one of Canada's largest transit systems. And our host is John Jang, a former local radio personality who will bring listeners behind the scenes to uncover the voices and the stories of our transit system. And as of June 13th, the first 5 episodes of the podcast have over 5,000 downloads. And while most listeners are Canadian, it's actually been streamed by listeners in 35 different countries across 5 continents. What's the Tea is recorded and produced in-house at TransLink. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and across a lot of major podcast platforms. If you haven't done so already, I really encourage you to subscribe and give it a listen. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your time today. I wanted to touch on something I started to touch on earlier around cycling improvements that we've been making. And we've been out in a couple different communities, specifically out in Surrey. The city of Surrey broke ground on the 152nd Street road upgrades project, and the city of New West opened up the brand new Agnes Street Greenway. Just to touch on these for a second, that 152nd Street upgrade was really thoughtfully designed and includes the addition of 2 more vehicle lanes, the twinning of the Nikomekel River Bridge crossing and transit and bus shelter improvements. Also includes the addition of multi-use path for cyclists and pedestrians. And the Agnes Street Greenway in New West includes a two-way protected lane for cycling and rolling improvements. So, we just have a lot going on. These are great projects that illustrate our commitment to creating really safe and accessible paths, encouraging more people to embrace zero emission modes of transit. And I didn't want to let that one slip, as those are two really great projects that we've celebrated with our municipalities in the past month. With that, thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So we're now an international company with a local focus. Is that how our podcast is going to start reframing us?
I think so. I think so.
Okay. So any questions for Kevin in regards to his report? So seeing none, I think we're going to then invite Sani to come and make his presentation in regards to the BC Rapid Transit Company. So Sani, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham. And in reference to the safety moment delivered earlier by Director Ross, I'm happy to report I am standing upright and it feels great. Next slide, please. I will be providing you with updates on our three priorities: delivering excellent service, achieving future readiness, and our people and culture, which underpins our success. Next slide, please. So really happy to report that we continue to deliver the best service possible in terms of delivering on our schedule. Our on-time performance and our customer ratings all remain strong. We obviously navigate ups and downs depending on weather and incidents, but by and large, our performance has been tremendous thanks to our team who makes it all happen every hour of every day. Next slide, please. In keeping our assets in a state of good repair is essential for us to be able to deliver that service. I will elaborate a little bit on the project that Kevin referred to. Replacing old switches is an essential part of our maintenance program. And one of the most complex projects we've ever undertaken is underway now, replacing two of the switches near Gateway Station. This is very highly complex. We're keeping service running on one side of the tracks. It has meant a disruption to our service and alternative service plans. I really want to thank our customers for bearing with us. This should be over by the end of July. We're doing our utmost to finish it as quickly as we can. Also, huge thanks to our crews who've come together to do this work as quickly as we can, and who've put in place alternative service plans, which are very innovative, to do the best that we can to serve our customers in Surrey, at Gateway and King George stations while this essential work goes on. Next slide, please. We're very aware that SkyTrain creates noise, and noise pollution is pollution, and we're very aware of that and have proactive, ongoing annual programs to do our best to minimize noise. The solutions are varied. There is no one single solution. We do our best to keep on grinding our rails to make sure the surface is smooth. To that extent, we now have new grinders in our roster that we can deploy to grind more rails every year. We have so far completed 80 kilometers. We plan to complete up to 120 kilometers this year. We focus on hotspots where we identify through our own inspections or through complaints from our neighbors that we need to be paying attention to certain areas. And we also do an annual program to make sure all of the rail is getting the attention it deserves. I will mention some of the larger, medium and long-term solutions to improve noise include bringing in new fleet. We know that the older Mark I trains are noisier, and so the sooner we can bring in the new Mark V trains and retire the old fleet, we know that that would also reduce noise. So we approach this from a multiple angle perspective, and it's an ongoing process that we pay attention to every year. Next slide, please. On the safety side, Kevin mentioned the response that we put in place. I'd like to thank our staff who responded to the incidents that we experienced, both in the region and on the transit system. We upped our numbers. We worked very closely with our staff to ensure their safety and the safety of our customers. And we succeeded in providing a level of comfort that we are monitoring safety and we're available to provide assistance in any way that we can for customers who need assistance. Also on worker safety, in April, we commemorated the Day of Mourning, remembering that safety is everyone's business and we want everyone to be able to go home safe at the end of every day. And we use analytics and evidence and the data from our records to take deep dives into what causes any incidents that cause harm, be it injuries or near misses, in order to then target our campaigns and mitigation efforts to try to prevent the next incident. It's an ongoing commitment with a dedicated team as part of what we try to do all the time to keep safety first and foremost in our service. Next slide, please. Looking now at the future, really exciting times. We are making tremendous progress on multiple fronts at the same time. So here where I am at the Operations and Maintenance Center, our new expanded maintenance building is taking shape, and one of our groups, the Guideway group, will be moving into it later this year, and then maintenance will expand into it, fleet maintenance will expand into it next year. Across the street, we are building our new Operations and Control Center. That building is taking shape very nicely, and we are planning to have that building opening in time for the Broadway subway project, to help our control team have the space that they need to be able to run a much expanded system. Also exciting to see works now undergoing at the Operations and Maintenance Center number 4, which is the one out in Coquitlam, a very large and complex site. Happy to report that site preparation activities are now very visible at that site. TransLink is delivering that project and we're working very closely with them. Significant construction activity will start on that site later this year. Next slide, please. We're also, as I mentioned, expecting our new fleet of Mark V modern trains to start arriving by the end of this year. We recently had members of our staff visiting the actual assembly line for the Mark Vs, and progress is going well according to schedule. So we're really excited to hopefully next year be introducing our new trains, quieter, larger, more comfortable trains. And as you probably heard, last week we celebrated the return of one of our West Coast Express locomotives, allowing us to run 5-car train service. Really pleased to see that, and we will continue with refurbishing our locomotives to provide them with more life and longevity on that system. Next slide, please. None of this will be possible without our people. Very happy in the last quarter to welcome Matt Doyle as our new VP for Maintenance and Engineering. Matt is returning to SkyTrain, having spent some time at TransLink, and his joint experience, having been with BCRTC before, and the experience he gained at TransLink will be crucial as he heads a very large portfolio leading our maintenance efforts and our engineering team. So we're thrilled to welcome Matt back to BCRTC. Next slide. We had our employee engagement survey in November. We are following up on everything we heard in that survey. So we're spending this year with an action plan to show up and follow up with leaders being very visible to frontline staff, listening, communicating, providing feedback loops on how we are striving, all of us, to make the organization better. As I mentioned, multiple safety initiatives to make sure both our workers and our customers are safe. And then how do we improve our workplace and our tools as the company expands? This is everything from office space to maintenance space, and making sure we have the equipment, the software, the tools and techniques we need as we grow the business. Last slide, please. And finally, this is Pride Month. Thrilled to have for the first time our new Pride Crosswalk here at the OMC, demonstrating our commitment to diversity and celebrating our culture. We are 1,200 people from numerous diverse backgrounds, thrilled to work with such an inclusive and diverse group. Our signage for the gender inclusive washrooms has gone up. and we continue to promote and celebrate the diversity of the team at BCRTC. This will only grow and strengthen as we also grow and strengthen our staffing to meet the challenges of the future. I think that was my last slide, Chair, and happy to take any questions from the board.
Sandy, thank you very much for that. I see that Andy is right out of the gate with the first question. So Andy, go ahead.
Great, thanks for the report, Sandy. I noticed in your report and more verbally, you addressed the issue of SkyTrain.
They're high-waisted. I can talk about people.
Can I ask everybody to mute? Sorry about that. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, so you were talking ironically about sound and noise. And I did notice just before we ended the AGM, there was a question about SkyTrain noise. I'm wondering if you could just expand a little bit on that. There was two issues since our last public board meeting that had a bit of headlines, and that was the rail friction modifiers. And maybe if you could give a brief explanation of that. And the other one was the announcement of the $35 million for track replacement. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is with the new rail replacement, the different composition from the rails should reduce noise as well. So maybe you could expand on that. I know you touched on your report, but I think this is such an issue, a bit more explanation would be useful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Ross. I want to start by saying we're very aware that we create noise. It's a steel wheels on steel rails. It's a noisy system. And I very much appreciate that this causes a concern, especially among the neighbors closest to our system. And we very much take that seriously. And we have a proactive program to do our best. We will never get rid of all the noise. I think our onus is to manage it, reduce it wherever we can, and use the latest available tools and techniques. You mentioned a couple of initiatives I'll elaborate on. Yes, when we replace the old rail with new rail, it gives us two advantages. The new rail that we're now using is harder steel, which lasts longer and is less likely to deteriorate. It still does deteriorate. It takes a longer time to do so. So it gives us more life with less noise as the trains run over the steel. Plus the fact that it is simply new rail, it means it is smoother, and so it results in less noise. The friction modifiers are a technique we're testing. We'd like to see friction applied between the wheels and the rails. We have evidence that will help. It's a matter of how much, making sure we're doing it in an environmentally sensitive manner, and that we're equipping our trains with the necessary equipment to be able to apply the friction modifier along the rails. And we need to understand the costs and the impacts relative to what we'd end up spending on the technology. So that's one of several initiatives we're undertaking, including baffling the noise, reducing the vibration of the rail. And I should also mention, we work closely with TransLink and the municipalities on trying to make sure that as transit-oriented developments go up around SkyTrain, that they're doing their best on all these new buildings to mitigate noise by doing the best they can with barriers, window treatments, to try to preempt the future concerns of the residents around the system.
Thank you. Any further questions for Sandy? I know that was a very fulsome and a detailed report. We all received the report in writing, so there's a lot of material in there that probably answers many of the questions. So if there's seeing none, then nothing else. And Sandy, thank you very much for your report. And we're going to move on to Mr. McDaniel, and he's going to talk to us about CNBC. So Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning again, everyone. I'm happy to be here to provide the CNBC President's report to you, and we'll start on the next slide with the agenda, please. So you see your slide there. I'm going to touch on bus and handy dart service, as well as a number of things with our people, public safety, and some safety plans as well that I want to update the board on. So let's go to the next slide, please. So up first, service on our conventional bus. Currently, we're delivering 98% of planned service each day. Kevin touched on this with the summer changes coming up. There's some increased service to a number of places, White Pine Beach, Deep Cove, etc. And so that will help out with just the shift of ridership demand in different areas of the region in the summer. You'll see now that we're about 85% of pre-COVID ridership on the bus side. Of course, we've talked about this a lot. Some areas are recovering much quicker, and we're addressing that by reallocating hours to those areas that are recovering much quicker. On the HandyDART side of things, we continue to see steady increase in ridership here as well. For the month of March, we delivered 98% of the requested trips. And you'll see here that in March, we also have taxi usage accounting for 22% of all trips. Now we're aware of the taxi percentage trending up, and we're working closely with our partners at TransDev, that's the HandyDART operator, to mitigate the issue. This issue is primarily due to lack of operators, but they're doing a wide range of things. And I wanted to just update the board on that today to close that hiring gap. For instance, they ran a very successful hiring fair in February where they've hired 40 drivers. They anticipate hiring about another 40 by the end of the year. But in addition to that, it takes time to obviously onboard staff, and they're partnered with ICBC to streamline their license processing, and that's going to help the speed of onboarding their staff. Now, I also want to say that the point that probably should be made is that many customers that do use taxis as part of this HandyDART service do express positive feedback to us as well. This does align with previous feedback we've received in past user surveys. And so really it's a matter of managing the system between HandyDART vehicles and taxis delivering those. And we're working with TransDev to do exactly that. Next slide, please. So just moving along to our people, one of CNBC's focus areas for 2023 is development, and supporting our employees throughout their career journey with CNBC from beginning to end has been a focus for us for several years now. Development is also identified as one of our opportunities in our 2022 employee engagement survey, the same survey that Sani just mentioned. And we're further emphasizing the importance of making improvements in this area with our managers and our supervisors. On the screen here, you see a bunch of different programs and the number of employees that have completed training so far. Our efforts in this area are pretty broad, as you can see, from transit operator training to refresher training, maintenance apprenticeship, UBC leadership programs, EDI. I've talked a lot about the training programs for operators in the past, so I want to actually touch on an EDI program. Our program manager, Ragini Apadarai, is facilitating these programs across CNBC, and so far she's led workshops that have included almost 500 employees, about 10% of our organization, and that training has been very well received. So shifting here for a second for perspective, next month, I actually celebrate 5 years at CNBC, which I'm very proud of. But every day that I work here, we celebrate these very grand milestones, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was actually at a 50th anniversary for one of our transit operators at Port Coquitlam Transit Center. The efforts that we put in here, investing in our employees, pays off in the day-to-day that we see, and the dedication of our employees that we see every day. Next slide, please. So in Q1, about 70 transit security officers and security operations coordinators received naloxone training and were equipped with kits and training for naloxone. On March 23rd, within the first week of being equipped with naloxone, one of our transit security officers, Stephen Lebreckhausen, put his training to the test. He administered naloxone to a member of the public and successfully revived them. I'm proud to see that the transit security being equipped with these kits and training made a difference right away. Following this particular event, transit security officers have revived members of the public 5 more times up to today. And we're seeing the immediate and life-saving results of decisions made months ago to equip transit security with these kits and training. Next slide, please. So just staying a little bit in the topic of safety and security, as mentioned earlier by Mr. Quinn, there were 5 safety incidents that took place in April, 4 that were on bus, prompting a full enterprise review of safety across our system. Following that review, CNBC implemented several quick response measures undertaken by Transit Security, including increased presence and visibility. We refocused daily activities, and we also provided safety information to customers. In addition, several new measures are now in place on the bus system and CBus, with new pre-recorded safety messages where bus operators can activate at their discretion, and on CBus where it plays automatically at the start of each trip. Still to come are the decals that Mr. Quinn mentioned for the 877777 text line, and those will be going up very soon. These efforts are a combination of quick actions and also long-standing activities to support the safety on our system for our employees and customers. And next slide, please. And I think still a little bit of a topic here on safety and security. This is a quick update for the board regarding our operator protection barriers. I'm happy to share the installations have started, and up to June 17th, we have 67 installed on our buses. We'll average about 25 per week, which means over the next about 6 months, we'll be complete on this project. At that point, we'll be 93.5% of our conventional fleet equipped. The remaining 6.5% of buses will actually be retired within that next year, making 100% of our fleet barrier equipped by 2025. And next slide, please. So to our heat exposure control plan, which we are constantly updating to ensure that we include the best mitigation strategies to keep our employees safe. You can see that with the heat coming in, now back again today, we're going to see that the various things on the slide that happen when that plan is triggered. I did want to just highlight that we now have installed a fan to better cool the operator cabin in our trolley buses, which of course do not have air conditioning today. They will when they are replaced in 2026 and 2027, though. Next slide, please. And so just to close off, in March of this year, CBus, CNBC, Emergency Management, Transit Police participated in a marine operational exercise with RCMP's Lower Mainland District Emergency Response Team. The exercise provided an opportunity to build a direct relationship with stakeholders and familiarity with each other. During the exercise, the RCMP Emergency Response Team members boarded the Burrard Otter II from helicopter and high-speed craft to rescue passengers and staff from a pretend security situation. The CBus team routinely practices drills such as abandoned ship, medical emergencies, and fire protocols, and at least once a year teams up with external groups on exercises like this. And that is it for me. I'll take the next slide and thank the board and see if there's any questions you might have. Thank you.
Mike, that was a great visual at the end. It's always interesting when these exercises happen, and I'm sure people who didn't know it was an exercise might have been concerned, but happy to know it was just a safety exercise. So any questions for Mike in regards to his report? Lots going on, as we all saw. So anything for Mike in regards to his report? Although it's comforting to know that there's a naloxone happening out there, it's still disappointing. And so do we provide, Mike, support to the individuals, the security officers that have had to use those kits after they've gone through that experience?
Yeah, Chair, we do. And with any significant, what we consider a significant incident, that would be one of them. We do provide a variety of peer counseling. We have a couple of internal programs. We also have a couple of external programs that our staff can plug into, like our EFAP program. We're very conscious that obviously we're a part of this community, and we are appreciative that we can respond when needed. And we're now a little bit more equipped to do that in our transit security area. So more to come on how we develop those types of programs in the future as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, clearly your report was fulsome. We read it all, we've heard it all. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move on to Chief Jones, who's going to talk to us about Transit Police. So welcome, Chief.
Thank you, and thanks, Madam Chair. I delivered a written report, which I know is included in the package. In today's presentation, we'll go over some of the highlights and updates about some key programming and events that have occurred over the past while. So next slide. So the first one really to talk about is the community safety officer. It says recruitment here. This is a program and initiative I know we've talked about and brought forward in the past. This was a long time in development, and as many individuals know, some other communities have started, or police agencies have started, community safety programs. Ours was a little bit unique in that we don't have a city necessarily to draw on, and we're cover 22 communities throughout a region. So we needed to collaborate with the provincial government and public safety in coming up with this program. Part of the program was also to look at, there were some nationally discussed topics around policing and public safety and how it should be delivered, and the need for when you need a full-time police officer, a fully trained police officer, and when you can perhaps have another layer or tier of safety that comes into play. And in this case here is an unarmed component. So they're trained in a lot of similar aspects, but not to the full level of being a police officer. It took over 3 years to plan this. This involved community consultations with various working groups, community groups, and being a provincial program, it also included consultation with First Nations communities around the province. And we're very happy to say that the first group has been recruited, is on board, and their training will officially be kicking off after orientation is now completed on next week, first thing next week. So there'll be some more information that comes out involving this new unit. Next slide. So just speaking of that, we did have on the bottom here is David Shin. He was our very first community safety officer. He actually started as a volunteer with the Transit Police, working out of our waterfront office. Was very heavily involved in the Blue Eagle Community Cadet Program. And those are the type of activities that you'll also see that the targeting for this group. Well, they will help with minor issues of public safety and calls for service. A big target of what they'll be addressing are assisting our neighborhood police officers, our community engagement team, dealing with public safety, education seminars, community events. And of course, as you see, they will be visible and able to maintain visibility in and around the systems, the transit systems, as an extra set of eyes and ears and assistance for the public and for ourselves as the police officers. Often the nature of their work will have them get engaged in something and take them away, well, whether they're completing paperwork, doing follow-up investigations, or having to necessarily fulfill the requirements in other areas. Next slide. Part of the role also we want to make sure, as a focus of our report and time here right now, is the work we do with other parts of the transit system and employees. So in this section, we've highlighted the work with the candle line attendants and refresher training. A big thing that the transit police do deliver and participate in is the training of new station attendants, STAs, and CLAs. We find that those are individuals that we work with hand in hand in delivering safety and services across the network. Well, there's other employees such as bus drivers, attendants, that are also involved. These are the ones who are more on the front line and work closely with our own members. So part of delivering the training is making those contacts early and then following it up. This also includes, we recently held a training day with tabletop exercises that happen each year to, again, develop the familiarity of the roles, the connection between the individuals, and looking for any trends that we may be able to address together in enhancing safety. Next slide. We know that crime and safety stats are important, and I will show some stats here. We're also very cognizant of the reputation or perception of what affect people in their travels within the use of an area or use of transit or attendance to something. So we've seen over the past while that boarded passengers are up by 37%. Often spoke about across the system, the return to transit and the use of transit, and that the Lower Mainland and leads probably on a North American scale, the return to transit here. But when we look at the volume of crimes against persons or the volume against property, which we measure based on the volume of ridership, we see that those crimes by percentage are down. The trend, as we saw through COVID, was that the numbers stayed close to the same, but as ridership changed during COVID, so less riders meant it went up, saw a rise in the volume based against persons. And now as we see as the ridership returns, those percentage numbers are dropping even further down. Next slide. In response to some of the high visibility or highly mentioned incidents that happened recently, and as I mentioned there, the whole issue of perception of crime and safety, we've stepped up again the high visibility deployments across the system. It is a challenge on times. If you can imagine that between the bus routes, West Coast Express, C-Bus, and of course SkyTrain stations, there's about 1,800 square kilometers. And as we see, it's very well spread out geographically. So we work together and we realize we can't do this alone. In this picture here, you'll see we partner up with jurisdictional policing partners to provide visibility in areas where their members can find the time. We enjoy the visibility with them and taking them around to show them how to access the system safely. What are the nuances of policing and public safety around transit hubs, main hubs, or on something such as a bus. Also on the bottom there, you'll see our volunteers. We have our own volunteer program, which has been led for the last couple of years and works out of the waterfront office. So together in a high visibility manner, they're able to get out and disperse educational materials, talk to passengers, talk to operators, talk to staff to ensure that anything that may be causing a problem or has the potential to cause an issue, we can hopefully address in advance. Next slide. You've seen, and it's been talked about, and Kevin Quinn at the beginning spoke about the 8777 texting number, which will be more widely advertised here. I can't emphasize that as enough, that we are one of the few agencies, not only in the Lower Mainland, but across Canada, that actually live monitors the texting. So any individual who texts that number will be speaking to a live operator. And on occasion, we've actually had people, when there's been challenges reaching other police agencies, use our text services to get a hold of ourselves to report something that is of concern to them. You know, when it happens and that texting comes in, as a video was shown earlier in today's meetings, when it comes in, it may not necessarily be the transit police, but as we get more information, we do have a great working relationship with our jurisdictional partners in finding out and being able to identify who is the closest person or individual who may be able to assist with the matter, depending on the severity of it, depending on the nature of what's happened. Quite often, this is because somebody may even need, the person who they're reporting may need medical assistance, may be in distress. And we mention that on occasion is sometimes it's not necessarily calling because you're concerned about yourself, but if you're concerned about somebody else, is to send that and perhaps text us if you believe somebody else needs assistance. We've noticed, and it was something we try to also put out here, the reason texting works well, and we've seen it, is because everybody's used to having a phone in their hands, and it isn't so obvious as putting a phone to your ear as if you're calling and having to speak out loud about what you're observing. And we really do encourage people to report it and not record it. We quite often will find there are incidents that people have recorded and perhaps posted onto a social media site, but haven't reported it to us, right? We're asking that they report it first and not necessarily focus on recording what is happening. Next slide. The next one is just a bit of a touch on a multi-jurisdictional. There are times and occasions when crime is occurring in and around the transit system, and the transit system is being used as either a meeting location or facilitating the movement. We are committed to making sure that the activities that go on, not only on the system or off the system, that draw attention or potentially create a public risk, will draw, I will say, a response from ourselves. And in a recent multi-jurisdictional investigation, we were able to, because of the use of the transit network, team up with the BC gang prevention units, with the RCMP, with the Vancouver Police Department, to disrupt a group of individuals who were involved in criminal activity that involved at times focused around a hub, one of the transit hubs. And working together with this, what it does is it makes sure that we make the environment around our transit hub safe and unwelcome to any level of criminal activity. Next slide. And as I come to the conclusion on the presentation here today, I did want to note that we've seen some people recognized recently for some awards, and it wasn't included on a slide. Our own Michelle Hansen received the Leadership Award from the BC Women in Law Enforcement for her effort and work in both developing and working with future female leaders within our organization, and her own development that has occurred. Candidate came from the Vancouver Police Department. Suzanne Muir is the new deputy chief who came in on June the 1st and has taken over the role in the administrative side of the organization. And 4 members, and this goes back a few years, 4 members who were involved in a shooting that occurred at the Scott Road SkyTrain station, where one of our members was shot at that occasion, were recognized by the Lieutenant Governor at Police Honors Night in Victoria, receiving awards of either bravery or meritorious service. It took a while because of COVID to get the recognition there, but certainly it was fitting for each of them to receive that recognition when it became available. Thanks. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate the presentation. Great information. Andy, I see you have a question.
Yeah, there's 2 actually, Chief. The first one kind of came up in our committee meeting and it's just been raised conversationally. It's around the text number, which the idea is great, but is there any reason why it is this lengthy or it doesn't tie into something simple like, we get star help or something like this? Is there a technical reason or is it just whatever?
I would be guessing it was in place before I got here, so I will certainly find out that answer for you as to how it got selected. And since I can't tell how they're assigned or who gets to select them at that time, so I will find out for you, but it was in place before.
Great. My second question, with the announcement in the news recently about the Vancouver Police Department moving to trials on body cams, I'd just like you to update the board what the experience with Transit Police has been, and is there any plans going forward to either pilot project or implement body cams for Transit Police?
So we recently, this has been something we've examined over the past couple of years. We've watched a trend. In fact, the Lower Mainland area, or probably BC, is one of the last, I'm going to say, group of police agencies to move towards body-worn cameras. The biggest holdup in the past had been the costs of storage and associated costs that will come with it, such as disclosure of the information and FOI requests, and developing a clear set of procedures. I can tell you that the police board it was fully discussed this at their last meeting, and they meet again tomorrow. We can see that we will be moving towards them. The Vancouver Police Department is about to put in a trial of body-worn cameras, and the Delta Police Department has been doing some as well. We've become part of the committees that are looking to implement this. And then one of the biggest things that facilitated the opportunity to start moving forward now is policing across British Columbia were recently implemented a digital evidence management system. And in that digital evidence management system, we have received the storage capacity to take body-worn video and put it into a cloud setting so that we are able to, so it's able to store it. We have fixed costs on that. We know a fixed cost on how much storage. There's an unlimited amount of data we're allowed to put into it. And that has paved the way as one of the biggest costs that goes ahead. It would still be a period, I'm going to estimate, about 18 months before we see it come on board. And by participating with Vancouver in their upcoming trial and sitting at their committee, we will learn along the way items such as the privacy concerns. When is it turned on? Is it always on? Is it turned on? Is it turned off? How do you disclose it? What are the privacy issues that will come with this? And as they work through it, we'll be able to implement best practices. I also do want to note that the National Police Force, the RCMP, have a mandate to bring body-worn camera to all their members across Canada and are currently looking at a pilot project with that, where they're testing some devices. So it is coming. The matter of timing here will be budget, like when do we submit it into the budget for the resources and the funding to purchase the device.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Jones, for your report. I also had two questions, one on the text, but I was curious about, on page 8 of your report, it says there are 5 times more texts that come from passengers on the train system versus the bus system. And knowing, I don't know the exact differential, but knowing that the train system is less riders than the bus system, it seems like a very significant weighting towards one side. I'm wondering if you can speak to that a bit, why that is so much more used on the train system.
I think what we've looked at in the next campaign coming up is it was never as widely advertised on the buses, individual buses, the decaling and the placement of signs and signage, whereas we had a greater presence on the inside of the trains and on boards and I'm gonna say advertisement panels within the SkyTrain system, because you're quite correct. I believe it's 65 to 70% of passengers use a bus, even if they're arriving to a train. There was more visibility of it and advertisement of it within the SkyTrain. That's all changing with the latest announcement here of the decaling. Not only will, as I understand, it'll be going on buses, it'll be going on each bus post for bus stops as well. So what we're going to have to measure here, and we're conscious of, is how that changes and how many additional texts and calls we have, and certainly something we can report back here too as we see any changes in that trend.
Great, thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to ask about, bear with me here. So there's a couple of numbers that relate to fare infractions and the provincial violation tickets that I just wanted to understand how they fit together. So there's been this 20% increase year over year, Q1 year over year, in the number of violation tickets issued. That's on page 9. On page 7 in the table, it looks like the fare infraction notices are pretty much stable. Like there's like 20 more, but given increase in ridership, probably actually quite significantly down per capita.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand the relative difference between the two, understanding they overlap a bit. And then the third piece of information is right at the end of your report. It says that from time to time, transit police officers may encounter a vulnerable person without the necessary fare media, and that the officer works through their discretion to provide a complimentary fare pass. So that would indicate that the VTs and the infractions are mostly not vulnerable people. So I'm trying to get a sense of like, how many people are in violation and what do we know about the sort of demographic profile of those folks?
So I don't think we don't have a method of checking necessarily or tracking the demographic profile just by the way we record and store the information on tickets that are being used. So I'll go to the difference of, so when it comes to the provincial notices, that usually is formed and they cover things such as pushing through a fare gate, following someone through a fare gate. So it's a more obvious visual that someone has committed an offense or a fare evasion by doing that. The fare, to have a fare infraction means the person doesn't have the right fare or any fare, and they're already within the fare paid zone. So they're already on a system of travel. The increase was we had seen increases in our ability to look at certain areas as to where there was even a higher volume of people pushing through gates or coming through. And part of that cause is because there's often, or not, I won't say often, but it does occur where damage occurs to the gate. So it's not even just that someone's pushed through, they become damaged and there's a repair and a value that's assessed on it. So we did some more, I'm going to say, enforcement and education in the areas we knew where we could track a volume of push-throughs going through in certain areas. And then on the fare infractions, it was only partway through the year that we were finally able to develop a new app that allows us to tap and see it. I mean, generally you could see someone once they're on a bus, if they've got their card, Compass card, we needed a method to say, had they actually tapped? Like you couldn't just look at it and say, it looks like you have a card. So that app is now in place for us to be able to tap with the member's phone and the app to see what is happening there. Lastly, when it comes to when you say like dealing with the vulnerable and who we are trying to ticket or who we are trying to enforce, we've taken a really I want to say tough look at and even educate ourselves on the use of discretion, because we recognize that for a lot of people who use transit, it is their only form of method of transit, and we don't want it to become a barrier as to what we're doing to do this. So whether it be through complimentary passes or even the officer's discretion, and when I mean the giving of passes is more because I could deal with a person at one location, but if I let them carry on, they're going to have to get off the system and tap out of a gate somewhere. And we don't want them pushing through at that. That's the use of passes, is to hand it off to get them to move on. We've really tried to say and have that it's more than just a discussion or just a look at someone, that it's, you know, here's a person doesn't have a fare. It's why don't they have a fare? Where are they going? What are they trying to do? Do they need assistance with it in terms of it? And, you know, we leave it in the officer's discretion as to whether there should be a fare infraction notice or a provincial violation ticket should be there. But you'll see that there's been a decline in fare infraction notices, mainly because, you know, up front is we've tried to ensure that we want to teach people or educate them first about why there's a need to pay this, as opposed to taking the enforcement role in the first instance. So we're trying to recognize that we want people to become educated in the need to pay for it, as opposed to strictly just being a blanket enforcement routine on anyone who's getting on the system. And I will admit, when it comes to the vulnerable groups, we do take we emphasize a lot of discretion for the members, like checking with them. So
that's great, super helpful explanation. And I'll just note, it's very good to see the mental health apprehensions down. That to your point about wanting people not to feel scared to take the only method of transportation available to them, I think that goes a long way.
I'll add, one of the things we try to tell, and if we could educate the public, is if you need to use the system and for whatever reason you don't have payment, we say find a police officer. They'll get you home. One way or the other will get you there, right? So.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrea. And Director Dollywall.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, just I think you mentioned it, you referred to it just a few minutes ago. We're expecting, with an enhanced campaign for the text messaging, we're probably expecting an enhanced level of text coming in as well. And I'm just wondering, you know, what are the KPIs and what do we expect in terms of the increased volume, and how are we getting ready to handle the increased volume?
Yeah, so even after these campaigns, we've always kept track of the number of texts that have come in. We keep track of the day of the week, the time of the day. We're looking at peak periods. And so one of the things we're really now going to want to monitor is whether they come in on bus routes, like whether, because it's be a heavier emphasis on the bus routes. So in preparation of that, one is we met with our jurisdictional partners, because if we've got a bus running in Aldergrove or South Surrey, somewhere that we aren't necessarily deployed or don't have the resources deployed, we're going to make sure we need their assistance, especially on any urgent manner. We have prepared staffing plans in terms of both from a communications perspective, and I will note, we haven't talked, we've developed the language capabilities, so it isn't just English, it's the translation capabilities within the system, so it can handle different languages. So there will be both the communication side of it, and we've looked at taking some of our resources that are potentially targeted to different activities or events, and then watching the KPIs as to whether we see a trend or an area in which we have to go out and address and deal with it. The one thing we can't do, and we recognize this, you can't advertise, call us and we'll come, and then not have the resources or capability to answer the phone or respond. So with that, there are some plans, and we've had some discussions about how to ramp up some staffing here. even in the short term as to ensure that that positive response happens right away.
Thank you. That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Jones. It doesn't look like there's any further questions. So I appreciate your report. I appreciate all the work you did for the written part and the verbal part. And things are progressing along nicely as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we're going to move now, directors, to the committee chair reports. We all had our committee meetings last week. And so I'm going to ask Tracy to deliver the first report, and that's for the Finance and Audit Committee report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone. Actually, the last quarter was a pretty busy one for Finance and Audit. We actually had two meetings, one on May 24th, where we received the Q1 financials and also the Financial Information Act report, which is required to be filed 6 months after the fiscal year end. As Kevin and team have been alluding to, Q1 financials continue to show improvement, reflecting the increased ridership, which is running about 3.4% ahead of budget and about 28% higher than Q1 22. Our June 12th meeting was again quite an extensive meeting. We had a full agenda and extensive discussions with management. We received a fulsome update with respect to safety from CEO Kevin Quinn. And as he mentioned earlier today, he and his senior management team view safety as their top priority. And this continues to be a very significant focus of management, the Finance and Audit Committee, and of course the board. We also received extensive reporting on the rail expansion program status and the Broadway, Subway, and Surrey Langley extensions, which are progressing. And indeed, in some cases, timelines are actually improving. We also received and reviewed management reports on the low carbon fleet program, the Marpole Transit Center, the Langley Community Shuttle Service contract tender, and the corporate sustainability semi-annual report, where again, TransLink continues to make good progress. Finally, we received an update on TransLink's liquidity position, which remains strong, and also reviews TransLink's borrowing requirements, the enterprise insurance program, bond issuance program, and we also had very comprehensive discussions with the Director of Internal Audit and Continuous Improvement. Just want to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Finance and Audit Committee for all the work that you're doing, and for, of course, the management team for everything you're doing with respect to making sure that our financial position remains healthy. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tracy. I know several of you were on the committee, but just wondering if anyone has any questions for Tracy before we move on to the next committee chair report. All right, so seeing none, then can I ask Andrea Reimer, chair for the Planning, Communities, and Communication Committee.
Thank you, Chairperson. We met on the morning of June 13th, so I think that was last week. Could even have been the week before. Last week feels like last week. So we talked about a number of things, not quite as busy as finance this time of year. Mostly quarterly reports, which included Q2 reports on Indigenous relations, customer experience, communications and marketing, government relations, and public affairs. We also did our annual review of the communications policy. And finally, as you'll see on the consent agenda today, we reviewed and are recommending that the MBRD 2050 Regional Growth Strategy proposed amendments at the Gloucester Industrial Park in the Township of Langley be approved by the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Any questions for Andrea in regards to the items that she highlighted? All right, well, seeing none, thank you, Andrea, for your report. And I'm going to ask Andy Ross, who's the chair of the Human Resources and Governance Committee, to provide a report.
Thank you, Chair. We also met earlier this month on June 13th, and I'd just like to start off by saying we welcome a new addition to our executive team. We have a new Vice President of Human Resources, or People and Culture, Tammy Young, and we'd like to welcome her on board. And she's been involved in a few brief weeks. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of Mark Jefferson in assisting the committee during the transition time. We had quite a heavy agenda. We have a couple of items which will appear later. As been reported on earlier, we reviewed our annual review of our governance manual and articles. We've made some minor changes, but a lot of change to the gender neutral language. Both of the manual and articles are available on the TransLink website. We also discussed the other item that will be coming up is the recommendations to operationalize our governance changes as we explore new avenues of joint committee working closer with our Mayor's Council and responding to the challenges as we go forward. However, I'd have to say the major components of our reports we're dealing with an item that I think every business is struggling with, and that's attraction and retention of staff in this changing workforce and the challenges it faces in this post-pandemic environment. And as been mentioned in some of our subsidiary reports, TransLink continues to build and expand on its equity, diversity, inclusion programs. And as I reported at our last public board meeting, we have a number of employee resource groups providing insight and input to assist us in EDI issues. And our latest group is the Accessibility and Allies Resource Group, which they provide lived experiences to assist and inform on current and upcoming issues as they relate to our workplace. The EDI team is active in all aspects of attraction and retention, including working on methods to improve everything from initial interviews, including an EDI orientation for new employees. And as you can imagine, in this environment, our acquisition team has been extremely busy. As of April, there have been 546 employees hired with over 33,000 applications processed. And Mike McDaniel in his CNBC report alluded to part of this. We've had 3 job fairs just for transit operators with over 3,000 candidates. Already 165 have been hired in our first quarter, and we will require 606 operators this year between conventional and community shuttle. So there are some great opportunities for people looking for employment, and we remain busy all through this year. And I want to talk about another issue right now. On the news, you may have seen recently, there was a large federal government strike, and there's one on right now at Capilano University, and the whole issue is on the work at home issue. As people transition during the pandemic and started working from home, now that we're beginning to partially normalize the relationship, we are seeing in these cases a struggle to adapt to this reality. And I think we're going to give some kudos to TransLink's departments on their Future of Work program. They started early in the process of working on our Future of Work, which brought a hybrid integrated system in where it is applicable, given the fact that a lot of our people who work in our enterprise are out on the front lines. The first phase of this program has been very well received by both managers, employees, and all are reporting high levels of satisfaction and productivity. And on the board level, there was quite lengthy discussions about how to operate efficiently in this manner. And while it's still rolling out and phase 2 will be rolled out soon, so far initially it's proving positive within the organization. And as well, one of the issues and new initiatives, we continue to explore innovative ways to draw attention to the significant shortage in skilled trades. This is not a problem unique to TransLink, and we need to radically change society's priority on the way they view skilled trades as career options. So we are looking at this internally in our organization, to see how we can provide more opportunities and more attention to what will be a significant issue for transportation sector going forward in the next decade, especially as we move forward with things like battery buses and new skills are required. And as always, we view this through an equity lens. We're looking at ways of changing the way and the profile of opportunities to who can hire in here. So over at SkyTrain, they've started up a pilot project. They're going now into the schools to talk about the opportunities. And we will continue to work with schools, post-secondary, and other transportation agencies as we attempt to look at a long-term fix, both for ourselves, but also to get more people into considering what is a well-paid, well-compensated, lifetime career and family supporting job. And that, Chair, concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Andy. Any questions for Andy in regards to his report? All right, well, seeing none, I'm going to move on to Karen Horcher, Chair of our IT Committee. And so, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. It's really hard to compete with both Tracy's report and Andy's report, but I'll do my best. So the Information Technology Committee held its quarterly meeting last week and received updates on a number of important items. The committee received an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning Program, or ERP program, its timelines and its next steps. We received updates from management regarding a number of additional current technology projects, as well as detailed reporting on the major projects that are currently underway. The committee received a presentation and had some good discussion on big data, analytics, and artificial intelligence and its use in the corporate environment, and it was suggested that a similar presentation might be provided to the full board. Finally, the committee met with the Director of Internal Audit to receive his reports on projects related to IT, and we held an in-camera meeting with Internal Audit, which is our regular practice. Chair, that's my report from the Information Technology Committee.
Thank you very much, Karen. Any questions for Karen in regards to her presentation? So seeing none, I just want to say how much I appreciate all the work that the chairs of these committees do to prepare for the meetings and to report back out. The committees are a bit of the foundation of a board, as you all know, and it's important the work that they do. So I really appreciate all the time that the chairs take and all the time that the members take in preparing and participating in those committee meetings. So with that, we're going to move to the consent agenda, and we have 6 items on the agenda. And just as a recheck, is there anything in this item before I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda? So Andrea, I see your hands up.
Thanks, Chairperson. I wanted to pull item 11.4.
Okay, so why don't we, I'll ask for a motion for everything in item 11, in section 11, except for 11.4. And can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Alan. And Andy, thank you for your second. And all in favor? Thank you. And any opposed? Seeing none. All right, so let's talk about 11.4. So Andrea, oh, and I see Mayor Hurley has a question as well. So Andrea, why don't you speak to 11.4?
Thank you, Chairperson. So this report is in regards to review of the board governance manual and articles. It lays out a number of amendments to the articles to the South Coast BC Transportation Authority. As you'll see in attachment 1, it's primarily housekeeping. However, in reviewing this material, it did come to my attention that under Article 13.3 in the first attachment, there's a list of specific skills and experience for board members. It's a list of 20 bullet points. So the idea is that every board member would have at least 2 of these domains. In that list, it does not include transit use as an experience that would allow someone to be qualified to be on the board. So I would like to make an amendment to that list to include a bullet point that says a regular transit user.
I'll second that amendment.
Sorry, who said that?
That's what.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
That's
okay.
Why I had my hand up. That's why I had my hand up.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay. All right. So we have a seconder. So can I call for the question to amend the this one piece? Any concerns to add this? All right. So I'm going to call for the question to approve the review of the board governance manual and update as amended. And so all in favor? Any opposed? So seeing none, that motion carries. So Jennifer, with the amendment, thank you very much. All right, well, I think that brings our agenda to a close. So can I have a motion to adjourn the public meeting? Just want to say it's Tracy, thank you. I just want to say it's been a bit shorter than normal because we had our AGM right before it, but it's been a fulsome meeting and I appreciate everybody's participation. And for anybody who's joined us online, thank you for your time and attention to the important work that TransLink does.